Welcome back to The Curious Minds, Knowledge in a Nutshell. I'm Jakob, and today we're exploring something you likely interact with almost every day: maps. They're on our phones, in our cars, and tucked into atlases on dusty shelves. But maps are more than just tools for navigation. They're powerful instruments of influence, shaping how we understand and interact with the world. Maps have been used to divide territories, expand empires, and even spark conflicts. They've fueled trade and exploration, defined borders, and influenced how we see entire continents. So, how did maps evolve from rudimentary sketches to the sophisticated tools we use today, and how have they shaped our history, politics, and economies? Let's dive in. The history of maps dates back thousands of years. The earliest known maps were scratched onto clay tablets by the Babylonians around 2300 BC. These maps weren't accurate by today's standards, but they served their purpose, marking out cities, rivers, and trade routes. By the time of the ancient Greeks, maps became more sophisticated. Ptolemy, a Greek geographer in the 2nd century, developed a system of latitude and longitude that laid the foundation for modern cartography. The real turning point came during the Age of Exploration in the 15th and 16th centuries. As European nations set sail to explore and colonize the world, maps became tools of power. Cartographers worked alongside explorers like Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama to document new territories. But these maps weren't always accurate. They often exaggerated the size of newly discovered lands to assert dominance. For example, Africa was often depicted smaller than Europe on early maps, even though it's 3 times larger. These distortions weren't accidental. They were deliberate choices that reflected political and cultural biases. One of the most famous maps from this era is the Mercator projection, created in 1569. It revolutionized navigation by allowing sailors to plot straight-line courses across the ocean, but it also distorted the relative sizes of continents. Greenland appears almost as large as Africa, despite Africa being 14 times bigger. This distortion has shaped how we perceive the importance of different regions, with Europe and North America appearing more prominent than they actually are. Maps have always been political. They don't just show borders, they create them. Many of the political boundaries we know today were drawn by cartographers in boardrooms, often with little regard for the people living within them. Take the Berlin Conference of 1884-85, where European powers carved up Africa using maps. They drew straight lines across the continent, ignoring ethnic and cultural boundaries. The consequences of these arbitrary borders are still felt today, contributing to conflicts and instability in many African nations. Another example is the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916, where British and French diplomats divided the Middle East into spheres of influence. Using maps, they drew boundaries that continue to influence the region's geopolitics. These maps didn't just reflect reality, they shaped it, often with devastating consequences. Even today, maps play a critical role in geopolitics. The South China Sea is a prime example. Competing maps from China, Vietnam, and the Philippines claim overlapping territories, fueling disputes over access to valuable shipping lanes and natural resources. These aren't just lines on a map, they're battlegrounds for economic and political control. Maps have always been closely tied to trade and commerce. During the Age of Exploration, maps enabled the expansion of global trade networks, connecting continents through sea routes. The Silk Road, one of the most famous trade routes in history, relied on maps to navigate its vast network of deserts, mountains, and cities. By the 13th century, the trade flowing through the Silk Road accounted for an estimated 10% of the global economy. Today, maps are integral to the global economy in ways we often overlook. Digital mapping technologies like Google Maps and Waze aren't just tools for getting from point A to point B, they're economic engines. Google Maps alone is estimated to have contributed over $200 billion to the global economy by improving logistics, reducing fuel costs, and enhancing local business visibility. In logistics, maps are critical for route optimization. Companies like Amazon and FedEx rely on advanced mapping algorithms to minimize delivery times and fuel consumption. By optimizing routes, they save billions of dollars annually, reinvesting these savings into expanding their operations. This efficiency has revolutionized supply chains, making goods cheaper and more accessible. But the economic impact of maps goes even deeper. In real estate, maps are used to analyze property values, track urban development, and plan infrastructure projects. In agriculture, precision mapping helps farmers monitor soil conditions and optimize crop yields. Whether it's e-commerce, transportation, or farming, maps are at the heart of modern industries. Maps aren't just practical tools, they're also creative and deceptive. During World War II, Allied forces used fake maps to mislead German troops about the location of D-Day landings. These maps were part of a larger strategy of deception that played a key role in the success of the invasion. In more recent years, maps have taken on a new dimension. Literally, Google Earth has given everyday people the ability to explore the planet from their computers, uncovering everything from ancient ruins to new islands formed by volcanic eruptions. In 2013, Google Earth even helped locate a man who had been stranded on a deserted island for 9 years. Maps are also being created for other planets. NASA has developed detailed maps of Mars, guiding rovers like Perseverance as they explore the planet's surface. These maps are laying the groundwork for future missions and possibly human colonization. Imagine a future where maps don't just shape our understanding of Earth, but of entire new worlds. Maps are powerful tools, but they're also inherently biased. Cartographers make choices about what to include and exclude, influencing how we perceive the world. For example, early maps of the Americas often omitted indigenous territories, reinforcing colonial narratives. Even modern maps can perpetuate biases. The Mercator projection, for instance, continues to be widely used despite its distortions, reinforcing a Eurocentric view of the world. This bias isn't limited to geography. In urban planning, maps are used to allocate resources, often favoring wealthier neighborhoods. Redlining maps from the 20th century excluded minority communities from access to loans and investments, perpetuating economic inequality. These maps didn't just reflect reality, they created it, shaping social and economic divides that persist to this day. Maps are more than just tools. They're reflections of our values, priorities, and biases. They've been used to explore, conquer, and connect, but also to divide and manipulate. From the Silk Road to Google Maps, they've shaped the way we see the world and the way we interact with it. The next time you pull up a map on your phone, take a moment to think about the stories it tells and the ones it doesn't. Maps have always been about perspective, showing us where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And as we continue to explore new frontiers, whether under the ocean or on Mars, maps will remain at the heart of our journey. Next week, we'll dive into another intriguing topic, zippers. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss it. Until then, I'm Jakub. This is The Curious Minds, knowledge in a nutshell. Stay curious.